My name is Brian Cass. I work with Clancy's. I've titled this presentation Going Digital. Some parts of it involve BIM, but primarily I'll show the digital tools and processes we're using to advance our company as much as we can. So Clancy's, we're a small and medium enterprise, so we're in that 95% category that Alan has mentioned, that Heather Humphreys had cited. But we're 70 years in business last year, so this is our 71st year. There's a couple of pictures there to commemorate our 70th year last year. So those of you of the hurling fraternity will know Liam Sheedy's up in the top left-hand corner. And that's our purchasing manager, who's for Clancy's, who's actually the PRO for Tipperary GA, so he does a lot of background work for them. Also last year we had an ex-WIT graduate, Aidan Marr, who won a CIUB Construction Manager Award, which is a very prestigious award, and it comes around every second year. So there were just some of the elements. We also had a float in the Turtles Parade to commemorate our 70 years. So yeah, we're a small medium enterprise. We turn over about 40 million, roughly. So that's varied over the last 2 or 3 years. So a lot of contractors will turn that over in one job, but our jobs tend to be between 5 and 15 million. That's our market. We've had a shift in the recent years from public to private. Back in 2014, public work would have constituted 90% of our work. Now it's about a 50-50 split, and we hope to actually that the private takes over the public work slowly in the next few years. But we always want to maintain public work because it's reliable work, and you're sure to get paid. So we're one of the top 20 domestic contractors. So we build our success. We feel we work with clients. Those of you who noticed, we rebranded last year, and we rebranded with the logo Built on Partnership, because we don't want to project this image that we're confrontational or anything like that. And it's driven from the top, it's driven from the board and then our senior management, that we're collaborative and very collective with the client. So we use this phrase a lot. So we're big enough to compete, but small enough to care, and that's probably the space we're in at the moment. We like to think we're an innovative company, and hopefully the rest of this presentation will show you some of the innovations we've introduced as a small and medium enterprise, which helps us on our workflows. We're big into leadership. We feel leadership is really important. We do a lot of CPDs with our management and middle management regarding leadership. We have a Twitter and Clancy account on LinkedIn if you ever want to follow us. So the agenda is, so I'll go through some of the digital tools that we use within Clancy's, and it's important to understand within these tools that I'm showing you, we have a process backed up. So in essence, an instruction manual that tells you how these processes are to be used and in what circumstances. And in a lot of cases, this will be linked to our QMS and QMS procedures, because at the end of the day, we have to, NSAI accreditation in terms of ISO 9000 is really important to us, because we can't tender for certain works if we don't have that accreditation. So I'll probably spend a good portion of the time on BIM 360 Field. So this is something we procured nearly 12 months ago now at this stage. And we invested a lot of money into it. So the majority of slides will be on this tool. So what is it? I suppose I kind of, I suppose, call it a site tool, essentially. So it manages our QA and QC. We're able to make issues and observations in terms of QA, QC, environmental safety. We've migrated all our checklists. So we've gone from a paper-based flow in terms of checklists to a digital checklist. We're still in the process of implementing commissioning through it. So we still haven't got there in that element. We use daily reports, which is essentially our site diary, our document library in terms of our contract drawings are all on it, and it's a governance tool, so it's a reference tool that we can use in terms of finding information that's easily searchable and accessible. So it's a robust record keeper and one central source. So it's designed for an entire construction team. So we have our site managers, quantity surveyors, site engineers, contracts managers, directors are all involved in it. And again, the key word here is information that's on it. It's easily searchable and accessible. You see the barcodes or QR codes in the pictures there. This is just even a quicker way that we can assess or access our information that we need at what time. So it does enable model workflows as well. Believe it or not, we don't actually use it that much for that because we don't have that much requirement in terms of our live projects. On certain projects we would, obviously. So it's a cloud tool, so and it works with your desktop and your iPad. So it's bi-directional, so you can create information within your iPad, push it up into the cloud, and that same information will be viewable on your desktop. So certain roles will use the iPad more than the desktop. So you might site managers, site teams might use the iPad a little bit more than the desktop, which might be for contracts managers or directors. We use primarily there's 5 or 6 headings within this application. I'll just go through 2 or 3 of them that we use predominantly at the moment and we phased in over the last 12 months. So issues and observations is one that we use a lot. So this is identifying defects and identifying problems on a project in a dynamic way as the project proceeds. It also can identify and assign tasks, and everything. Locations are fixed into it. So at the start of a project, we would set up. It takes a bit of time at the start to set up a project. So you would input all the requisite information in terms of locations and how you categorize them at the start. Site diary is another element. So this is a lot more visual than previously. It would have been a paper-based flow. What we use now is done through the iPad, purely or predominantly with our site team in terms of our site managers. So it will know the location straight off. So it'll give you a weather snapshot. We do our labour allocation on the iPad. The reports are then automatically set up that these are emailed to our site administration team when they want it. So it's a quick digital workflow in lieu of what would be in a paper-based process beforehand. And again, this would be there would be a process written up for this, a quite detailed process, which would be part of our QMS procedures and QMS forms. And so if we get an audit from NSAI, that they're able to see that this process has been followed. And it's also there in terms of new resources that come to the company. So we've migrated to digital checklists. So again, this will be paper-based workflow beforehand. At the moment we have about 250 templates of checklists in our system. So I come from a contracting background, a engineering background myself, so I recognise how painful this process was beforehand, and it's more seamless now. So conventionally you would have been talking about 3 devices, so you would have had to search for the template within, checklist template within your server, your system on your laptop. You would print that checklist out. You would then take that template with your camera out to the construction site. You take pictures of the issue. You take notes on your checklist, and then you would get the contacts of the relevant subcontractors. You would then bring back that into the office. You would transmit the pictures onto the PC. You would download the template again, fill out the template with your notes, and attach the relevant pictures and marked up drawings. So it's even a mouthful trying to say it. It's very long-winded, and to be truthful, it ended up in a lot of redundancies. So now it's done completely on your iPad, and in a lot more seamless fashion. So again, in terms of library, so we hold our drawings on the library, so it's a sort of common data environment. So we try to make it as visual as possible. I don't like folders, and I think construction people in general don't like folders. We're visual people. If we wanted to read text, it would have been solicitors or lawyers or something. So we try to make it as visual as possible, and there's a history to every drawing. So if you have one drawing, a ground floor drawing of a particular project, and just 4 revisions to each drawing, that is the 4 files are layered on top of each other. So there's huge transparency. That was something we didn't have before. We typically would have 4 independent files. It could cause certain confusion. So what has BIM 360 really brought to us? So every device, every print is a loss of money to us. Walking around searching for information, we want a searchable and accessible information that you can get quick, and we feel BIM 360 Field is a tool that can do this. Here's some of the data we can extract from the tool. So all the time when you're using the issues and observation menu to it, you're building up a database, a KPI of your subcontractors. So we've only really been able to analyze this data in the last 12 months, or the last month, because it takes about 12 months to gain that information. So this is a data extracted from BIM 360 Field. When we were procuring for a new job, we got 3 subcontractors that we'd taken data about in the previous 12 months, and we were able to see that subcontractor 1 had the least issues, subcontractor 2 had a few more, and subcontractor 3 had loads of issues on previous jobs. And you probably don't have to guess who the cheapest was. It was subcontractor 3, and we didn't go for him. But that's how we use the data. So this is another thing that we're trying to go digital. We're trying to reduce paper flows as much as possible. So we use about 20 boxes of paper roughly a week, which constitutes to €340 a week. So 1 year of A4 paper for us is about 17,500. So now we're not going to be able to eliminate all that, because there are certain items within tenders where clients will request paper, but our aim is to reduce that by half this year and more next year, and continuously looking at the workflows in terms of reducing paper. So even within the first year, there's 9,000 roughly that can go towards that system that we've saved. Another tool we use is called Bluebeam. Again, this has gone from a paper workflow to a digital workflow. So we use the Bluebeam Studio projects. Bluebeam can be split into two elements: studio projects and studio sessions. So studio projects is used for the drawing ratio. So what you saw in BIM 360 field in terms of drawings being layered with the superseded drawings underneath it, that's something that comes from Bluebeam, and we have an API that links Bluebeam to 360 field. And so that once the drawing mesh has been updated in Bluebeam, it updates in 360 field. Technical submittals and shop drawings is another bugbear of ours in the last few years. Conventionally, we were doing a lot of the reviews through email, so depending on how many stakeholders involved, you could have numerous threads and information being lost within an email system. We want to get away from an email system, so studio sessions is a collaborative environment where everyone can access the documents in the one area, and we're able to have digital stamps. So again, we produce the workflow and a process link to our ISO 9000, and that we were able to use digital stamps that our design team or whoever was reviewing were able to use these digital stamps. It's also a great 3D PDF tool, by far the best one I've ever seen out there. It doesn't lose as much information or geometry than any other PDF tool I've ever seen it. So another thing we use is 2 years ago we bought a BIM model integrated robotic total stations. So that takes in 3D models in IFC format or a SketchUp and I think DWG. So we found this a very valuable tool. We've used it on 2 projects. On a palliative care project in Dublin City Centre, where models were provided as part of were provided by the design team, and probably more interestingly in a level 2 project for an FDI client just outside Dublin, where the model was very dynamic, and we were able to continuously update, where it was continuously being updated, and we were able to plug it into the tablet, and it really worked well there. Really. So we tried to make our site logistics as well, so that our whole site team can get involved in terms of BIM and in terms of digital workflows. The little cabin on the left hand side there, that's actually a 10-foot cabin that you could wheel around yourself. So this was for that FDI client that I mentioned previously. So the main site office was about 3/4 kilometre away from our floor plate area. The floor plate area is quite big. It was about 150 metres by 100 metres. So instead of having our site team going up and down continuously, we brought in this 10-foot cabin. We fitted it out with smart TV and a desktop computer, which had the digital tools that were required in order for the site team to engage in. And it worked really well because, again, we were a fit-out contractor there. Again, the model was very dynamic, and in a lot of cases it was passing out the construction drawings. So when it came to things like OPS, we were able to keep that tracking of OPS, forming of OPS live, and we reckoned we done a cost exercise on it. We reckoned we saved nearly 30,000 towards the client in terms of OPS that would have been missed if we hadn't this particular setup on the floor plate area at that time. And so on the right hand side is just our typical office. We would have, as I say, smart TV in every office container, in the meeting room anyway, and it should be hooked up into a specialized desktop computer, which will give us will give the site team the tools to engage with it. So we try to do all our site logistics now in using 3D tools. We just think it gives a bit more clarity. So each site that we start now, we have the cabin set up on it, we do scaffold and crane setups. So this is a crane that goes right through the middle of a building. So we're able to analyse that a lot better using 3D tools, analyse the optimum placement of that crane, because we didn't want it to clash with an area that could result in us losing time or having some effect with the programme. So this is actually a site in Dublin City Centre. We were able to give the client an idea of where his banner should be. Our site hoarding was set up. We do our scaffold plans, if at all possible, using 3D elements, because again it gives better clarity. We can export it to BlueBeam as a 3D PDF, and our scaffolders can look at it on free tools and quite easily. And we try to do that in most jobs. It's not possible on every job, and maybe with time constraints, but we try to make it, put into detail so the clarity is there. So we've introduced virtual reality in the last year or two. So on the left-hand side, that's actually that's a day's workshop with 2 senior QSs and one senior project manager and myself. I was on a workshop on a tender we were looking at probably 5 or 6 months ago, and the virtual reality model, the model that was provided at tender stage, was set up, and so in between their Excel sheets, the senior QS was, if he had a query about certain areas, he was able to walk to the model quite easily using a PlayStation controller. And PlayStation controllers, for some reason, it's like they're reliving their youth, because they love working with things like that. You give them a free viewer or a BIM viewer, and they can't work out the controls, but you give them a PlayStation controller, and suddenly it's like they're playing Sonic the Hedgehog again. So, but they were referenced. I was there that day. Every so often into the model references, and it's just another tool that we use. Again, we have a backed up process for it. So we try to use 4D BIM a bit more than, conventionally we use it just for the fancy tender video or Hollywood video, but we try to use it more in live projects. Again, it's not possible in every live project because it's not required, or it doesn't make sense. But for instance, that FDI project I mentioned previously, we would use it. We used it consistently throughout that project. So that project was about a 30-week program, and we were using it for. I'll just turn on the video actually. We were using it consistently to reference where we were in the program. So it was used against the baseline program. So we were the fit-out contractor in that project, but we had no control over the services or other contractors on it. And we were being held up by other contractors, and we weren't meeting our program. And this was a very visual way of illustrating to the client and that we couldn't close up partition walls at a time we wanted it. So what you see there is walls, and there are partition walls in purple. And so when the walls turn green, they should be closed up. What was happening, there was pockets of walls being left, which we couldn't close up, and it was delaying our program. And this was produced weekly, so for 14 weeks while we were installing. So you see the walls have turned green now, they should be closed. But when you see the walls turn red, that's actually the walls have been closed. So on top left-hand side, you see the date elapsing, and so you can see all them days going, and the walls are not being closed. And according to our program, we should have. And this wasn't down to us at the time. So that's when the walls were closed on that first phase. So you have a whole, the project was divided into 3 phases, bottom, middle and top. So again, we should have the walls closed, and that's when we close them up. And this is produced weekly for 14 weeks to illustrate the fact that it was originally a 22-week program, and it took us 33, but the 33 wasn't our issue. And it was produced in conjunction with the site progress report and the baseline program. It just highlighted the fact that we're being delayed, and it became a very valuable resource towards the end of the project when we were fighting for final account. Again, these are just marked up drawings using the BIM model to show that fact. But that was use of 4D BIM consistently through a project. We're trying to get to that stage. It's hard. So we use drones as well recently. So that's another. Again, we don't use it much beyond the visual reporting. So it goes with the site weekly or the site bi-weekly progress reports that's issued to the design client every 2 weeks. I won't show you all this video, but this would be typical of what we produce every 2 weeks. So I do in-house training regarding BIM 360 field I try to get a site to a site every 2 weeks. So I do this in conjunction with it. So a program in a flight, and so you get the same flight every 2 weeks. And again, this is on a shared platform within Clancy, so people can view it quite easily, and people can extract it, what they want from it in terms of maybe there's a site set up in terms of the cabins that they want to, that they could use on their own site. But we are probably looking into photogrammetry at some stage, but it's probably a bit down the road. So we use a Typhoon, unique Typhoon H with a 4K camera on it. So we try to get every site 2 weeks, thereabouts. And again, at the end of the job, you have a collection of information which can be referenced. So I don't know if you want to see the whole of it, so you kind of get the idea. So my summary would be, we've been implementing these digital systems for the last 3 or 4 years since I've been with the company in 2013, and probably before that. And the one thing I've noticed is change is really hard. And so it's specifically 360 Field, which is a very integrated program. I like this picture because it kind of, I could be that person, salesperson, instead of machine gun, I could have an iPad. And the person with the sword could be a site manager with a pen. And no matter how many times you tell them this is an easier tool, they find it, it's culture, it's habit. They've been doing it for 20, 30 years. So we have to get over that phase. Some people it's harder and some people it's not, but it really is hard. So I normally get all these, I've got all these excuses, every one of them, so. And it shouldn't be the case, and the best one I get is, we've always done it this way. And so the last slide, I show these last 4 slides I do an in-house presentation nearly every 2 weeks as a in-house training, and I show these last 4 slides every presentation, and lads within the teams are probably sick of looking at them, but it's just trying to hammer home the point. And I actually got this slide from back in 2013 when I was doing my undergraduate degree with WIT, which was on BIM. I spoke to a guy called Ronan Collins, which some of you might know. Yeah, he was as part of my thesis. I interviewed him, so he's a big BIM activist over in Hong Kong area, and he said a thing about the 3 Ps. So the 3 Ps would have been power, process, and people. And the power is about 10%, The people, or the process is about 20%, and the people is about 70%. And I probably was a little bit flippant about it at the time, but I've seen that in my own eyes in the last 3-4 years. It is so hard, and unless the people engage, it can fail. So there's no doubt software improves collaboration, but the people make it work. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Brian.